Hello, everybody. This is the Silver Busters channel, and the question I have for you today is: Is now the time to pull the plug on the existing financial system? And I'm kind of assuming that coming into a video like this, a channel like this, that perhaps you've seen videos by other people about gold and silver, about the fiat money system, about the Federal Reserve, about various central banks around the world, and how they act, and have a basic understanding of what the existing financial system might be if you clicked on a title like this. But for a long time, I've been, a precious metals investor and into alternative economic kind of topics since the early 2000s, basically since college, since I had enough money to scrape together to even start considering any kind of investment. And that whole time, there's never really been a time throughout there, whether we were talking about the national debt, whether we were talking about low interest rates at the time before they were actually zero interest rates, that there was never a time where anybody was thinking, "Hey, this is a super sustainable system," and it was always, even I'm stretching way back here, going all the way back to Ross Perot's people saying, this system is unsustainable, and if we continue on this path, we are going to basically collapse the entire economy. And we're going to collapse it in a dramatic fashion, in that hyperinflation or some sort of civil disturbance, civil war is going to be the outcome of this because it's not something that you can just control very easily. Once you get this far out on the ledge of this fiat system, uh, then it's just going to end very poorly for people. But that's been the message for a very long time. But there was more, the further back you go, there was more hope that, hey, if we get on the right sort of combination of moderating our spending, maybe paying down our debts, having more respect for the amount of money creation in the system relative to our stockpiles of gold and silver, maybe this would be manageable. But the whole process, going through the decades since that time, you've had periods of control where Republicans have had the presidency, the House, and the Senate. You've had periods of time where the Democrats have had complete control of the presidency, the House, and the Senate. And basically, with that, they could darn near push through whatever sort of financial reforms they wanted to push through. They could have changed the system in any meaningful way within the bounds of the Constitution, which, these days doesn't seem to be much of a hindrance to whatever the federal government wants to push through. They already had this opportunity multiple times throughout my lifetime to make whatever changes they wanted. And at the core, what never changes is this financial system. This financial system that allows them to essentially create infinite money on demand without regards to what effect it has to the economy and hand it narrowly to special interest groups, to cronies, to pork barrel contractors, to big banks, to big businesses who are well connected, who fund the campaigns of these people, all at the expense of the actual productivity of the center of the nation. The people who get up and go to work every morning, the people who haul your trash, the people who cook your meals, the people who watch you while you sleep, if you can catch that reference. Basically, um, it's a system that screws the vast majority of the middle of society, all the way up to doctors, lawyers, engineers, all the way down to the trash man and the guy who makes just enough money to not qualify for welfare benefits. And the difference is assets. That Whenever there's inflation, assets go up in price, but wages do not go up to match that. The number that's being bandied about this year, and this seems to be sourced well, is that in 2020, 22% of all dollars that were created this year during this pandemic response that we've had. So think about that. Have you gotten a 22% raise? I mean, I don't know if we can say exactly that we've had 22% inflation this year, but there's been a lot of cases where I go to the store and the basic brand version of whatever product is completely sold out. So you're there and you either have the choice of going without or buying the premium product that costs 50% more for basically the same product. And if that's not inflation, it's one side of type of inflation. And I'm gonna have to do a video one day on just explaining all the ways inflation is being hidden from you, but that's kind of a different topic. The topic today is we've gotten through another election cycle, and basically, no matter what happens, because we're still in this gray area of, will Trump pull off enough, prove enough improprieties in the mail-in ballots, because mail-in ballots are notorious for fraud. And if you don't believe it, go look up how many countries around the world, how many supposed models of European socialism uh, like France that ban mail-in ballots because they are so easy to fake. They are so easy to game the system with. Uh, but basically, no matter what happens, no matter who you're rooting for, this question should be important to you, because if you're on the left and you think this benefits working people to get rid of this system, because like I just explained to you, this system is set up to help people with a lot of assets at the expense of people with fewer assets or no assets, then that if you're somewhere to the right of Stalin, that proposition should still have interest to you, because it's something short of outright crazy communism that will help the working person against the capitalist class, because the capitalist class would actually need the savings of the working class and have to pay them a fair interest rate to get them to fund enterprises. Whereas right now all they do is they go to a bank, that the bank is backed up by the central bank of a country, and they say, we need XYZ dollars, and we need it at an interest rate that's a nominally negative interest rate, that by the time you factor in inflation, the interest rate is less than zero, and the big businesses get that loan all the time. But Joe Blow on the street is never his, you can have a 730 credit score, and the interest rate on your credit card is still going to be 15%, right? The average person is never going to get that kind of connection to that kind of a low interest rate loan, no matter what they're doing. And that's for the perspective on the left. On the right, it's like there are no more social conservatives. I mean, no, excuse me, economic conservatives, or small business, small government conservatives, who want less government spending, to be balance the budget and pay down the debt. That party doesn't exist anymore. For a long time, we're thinking, well, maybe if we get someone elected who is, obviously they're not going to change the system, but if we get a Republican elected, they won't spend as much money, and they won't get the population as dependent on handouts. But has that really been the case? I mean, yes, it's true that maybe Trump will have ultimately spent less than Biden, but you can still see the acceleration. You can still see an acceleration in the trend from, every administration has, over, if you put it out over an 8-year period, roughly they're doubling the national debt every 8 years. So Trump won't quite get there, because he may or may not get his, it would be slightly more in his second term than it would have been in the first term if you're following a exponential growth rate like that. But it doesn't matter anymore, right? You get a Democrat, you get a Republican. They've got the whole coronavirus lockdown narrative, and yes, coronavirus is a real thing. I can't prove whether it was released from a lab or ginned up or comes from nature. I can't prove it's a real thing. What I can tell you from a historical basis, I can do the research. I have the background in history. I can tell you that coronavirus, even killing 250,000 people, if that's what it ends up being this year, especially when you consider that the average age of death is over 80 years old, and the amount of preconditions that basically it's what 6 to 8% of people are considered to have no preconditions. So basically, this is a disease that targets sick and old people who are already outside of the economy, who could very easily, have special precautions made for them. If you're 80 years old and have Alzheimer's already, you're at a really big risk of dying from coronavirus because your body is already on the decline. And this is not the kind of practical steps that we're seeing from the government. What we've got from the government is shutdowns, right? We've got entire economies being shut down. We've got drastic printing of money, drastic handing out of money to businesses with a large degree of fraud involved, because the amount of paperwork is just immense and there's no one going and checking up on all these people that are getting these PPP loans. And it's like, yeah, you have to use it for payrolls or whatever. And, we've got, for such a long time, we had people that were unemployed getting paid more for not working than they were when they were working and not want to come back to working. The point is, it looks like we're getting to a tipping point, and the damage to democracy is in terms of perception. Like I said, I cannot. I'm not here with the eye of God and able to tell you who is right or wrong on the election fraud issue. I'm not that smart. What I can tell you is that no matter what happens, you're going to have half the population of this country thinking that the other half of the population stole the election. That basically the legitimacy of the systems are being called into question to such a high degree, and the polarization is so high that it doesn't really matter what the outcome is. And it doesn't really matter whether you get a Republican or a Democrat. You get a slightly faster or slower rate of acceleration. It's going to be worse no matter who gets in. It's just how much worse, right? And so, considering that, you have to ask the point: are we now at the point where it makes more sense to break the financial system than it does to hold on? Because yes, we could see that we were on a dangerous path for a very long time. Definitely, we could see that we were on a dangerous path, and there were people saying it. But there were a lot of advantages to kicking the can. If there weren't a lot of advantages to kicking the can and making the long term issue worse and making the short term issue easier to handle, then it probably wouldn't have gotten done, right? There are a lot of benefits to stretching out a crisis, especially if you're the guy who's not prepared. Now, if you've been watching it and aware of it for the last 20 years, like I have been, you're thinking, well, what can I do in the next 4 years that I haven't already done in the last 20 years to prepare for this thing? Because it's going to come one way or another. If you understand history, if you understand every other fiat currency that's ever existed, every other empire that's ever existed that's dabbled in debasing their currency like we have, it's going to come. Now, it could be like living in the late ages of the Roman Empire, right? You could know Rome is in decline and still be 150 years away from the ultimate fall of the Western Empire. Or you could have been living in the east of the empire and technically not had a complete crash of your society until the Renaissance, right? So these things happen on a historical timeline, and it's easy to get caught up in the emotion of things. And there were a lot of people during that first 20 years who were, between 2000 and 2020, who were predicting doom, giving 100% certain elements of doom predictions within, this is it, 2008, this is it, or Obama got reelected, this is it, or Trump is the new Hitler, this is it, the never Trumpers, or now there's people saying Biden, and I don't think Biden is I'm more worried about the people behind Biden, the people who are unironically running around in the streets with a hammer and sickle, burning down neighborhoods. And then if you do something about it, if you defend your home and property and livelihood, you're brought into jail for defending yourself, while their political cronies running the streets and the mobs burning down their political opponents. I mean, that's the level of instability that's got me thinking. Plus, on the flip side is that there's no matter who wins, is not going to end up peaceful, right? There is no good kick the can option left. There's nothing that said, well, I mean, there's a very narrow case for, okay, maybe at least it's split government, right? Maybe Biden gets in, that's what it's looking like. It's the most likely thing. I mean, Trump could pull it out with some legal maneuvers, but it looks like Biden's getting in. But hopefully, based on this Georgia runoff situation, um, that's going to end up giving him a split Senate. And like I said, um, it doesn't matter what party is in control, but at least if they have to negotiate, the effects might be moderated of what they had to do. So if I was trying to make a case against what I'm thinking right now, it would be, oh, we're going to get 4 years or at least 2 years of divided government, and nobody's going to be able to get anything major through, and that's going to lead to can kicking, right? What can kicking means, like trying to extend the status quo as long as possible through the same means that exist, which would mean more quantitative easing, more debt spending, more of the same. And maybe not quite as much as if you had a fully Democratic Congress or a fully Republican Congress government. But that's the only thing I can think of is, like, I mean, you talk me down off the ledge if you think 4 more years of this is a good idea. But the pace of the interventions, the helicopter money directly to people, the shutdown of the economy, the disruptions to the supply chain, to grocery stores and to businesses, and to small businesses being put out of business in favor of, Walmart can be open, but Joe's hardware store can't be open, right? So Joe gets put into the out of business. And then you have all of these people, Bond villains in Davos basically talking about the Great Reset and how they want to centralize and control everything. They want to roll out a new currency. They want to get rid of cash and track absolutely everything that you do and buy, and give you a social credit score, and get complete control over healthcare. And then if you need some kind of surgery, it's not whether you can pay for that surgery or not, it's whether you've been a good enough boy or girl and have a good social credit score that the government maybe will decide to pay for your medical procedure, because they now have complete control over the economy and all your purchases. And basically, they ring you in even tighter into a financial system and slaughter you at their convenience, because there's no way to move your capital out of the system and to get away from their inflation and their negative interest rates. So basically, the acceleration towards that type of tyrannical endgame, with mobs in the streets and the legal system only existing to attack people who defend themselves at this point, has got me thinking, now, if there's ever been a time where the disadvantages of ending the financial system, the fiat money printing system, and getting back to some type of gold and silver standard. If that time had ever, if that balance between the good and bad of ending that now, because I think everybody is there understanding. I've heard this said before that silver could be $600 an ounce. That's the cliff high number, $600 an ounce. But I've had a lot of people say you won't like the world when silver is $600 an ounce. Yeah, but I don't like the world right now either. So childbirth is painful, right? Birth is painful. But so is doing what we're doing right now. So are we reaching the point where, that trade off, that, the ripping off of the band aid to getting to something new and ending that system and enduring whatever we have to endure to get to that new system that's more honest and transparent and has real consequences for people who fail and isn't able to just bail themselves out politically anytime that there's a problem, is to getting to that point worth whatever disruption we'd have to suffer. And as much disruption as we've seen recently, I'm leaning towards yes. It's like, yeah, maybe we could eke out another 4 years of split government, but I don't think it's going to fix anything. And even if we get that, I think that's going to be the last 2 to 4 years you get before this comes to a head and you don't get a choice. Now, what I'm saying is like, well, you're saying, what is the choice? Well, the choice is not just to buy physical gold or silver, but to buy it in such a way and reach to such a large mass of people and a large mass of money that you actually precipitate the crash of the financial system. And the weak point for the financial system has always been argued by people that I've listened to for the last 20 years to be the silver market. So the name of the channel is now Silver Busters. What I'm saying is now in my head, it makes more sense to go extreme, not 5 or 10% of your portfolio, not to hedge a little bit of your existing bond portfolio that is yielding you negative returns after you factor in inflation. It's like, no, the way things have gone in the last year or two, if you weren't already almost all in and just running side bank accounts to pay your bills every month, now's the time to be all in. And yes, I am not a financial advisor. I am some guy on the internet that you should not be taking advice from. But I have the historical perspective. I'm not here to sell you gold or silver. I do not run any sort of investment research bureau that where I want to sell you some sort of pamphlet. I'm thinking about the safety of my family. I'm thinking about the future of my family. I'm thinking about the type of society and just day to day life that I would find acceptable to live in. And I'm looking at what we just went through in 2020 and the election, and I'm thinking, isn't really the only solution to fix this to starve the beast, to take away their printing press, to get them back to a more responsive level where to get them back into limited government where they can't just print bonds ad infinitum, all over the place and do whatever they want and ignore the little people because they have a printing press? That's where I'm at. And I'm thinking, I'm trying to convince you. I'm like, where do we go from here? It's like before you're like, you might say, well, I want some more time. I want some more time to prepare. I want some more time to get new plans. I want some time to learn new skills or to get more capital or any of this other stuff. Listen, we're getting close. And other people have been wrong before. But how much more of 2020 can we take until we're suffering through things consistently that is just as bad or as worse as doing what is necessary to collapsing the Fiat system, which is probably some sort of forced failure of delivery on the comic, something that knocks out the paper pricing mechanisms completely, something that creates a separate physical market for gold or silver, gold and silver, and basically forces the big governments around the world into, if they want to get anything done, to have to come back, reorganize their currencies, and base them around gold and silver. And you just do that by overwhelming the market. If you break this manipulation mechanism that they have with the futures market, they're trading 500 times more claims on gold and silver than they actually have available physical gold and silver. So you have all these people in ETFs, in futures, in unallocated accounts, in allocated accounts that they think are allocated that aren't really allocated. Basically, all those people need to get out of those type of investments and get into gold and silver. If you've made a bunch of money on cryptos, I think cryptos are great for the futures as a mechanism of, if you're in a certain kind of jet set class and you're an international person and you're all over the place, yeah, there's a lot of advantages to crypto, but it's not the replacement for gold yet. I just don't see it, and maybe you need to get some of those gains that you've got off of your Bitcoin and get it into gold and silver to help push this over the edge, because you're not going to push the system over the edge by increasing the Bitcoin price, because they can just come up with something newer and sillier, and it's just not penetrated enough into the market to make a meaningful difference. You need to break down the fake underpinnings of the fiat system, and the fake underpinnings of the fiat system is gold and silver, the price that they have falsely maintained over all of these years. So I'm thinking now is the time that if I had a button that I could press and this button said, do the reset, go through all of the pain and misery involved with the conventional fiat money system being pressed, after 2020, I'm pressing that button. And I'm thinking you should press that button. If you are just kind of hedged and you still have a 401k and you still have conventional stock and bond 60/40 kind of portfolios, why? Why? I mean, you're losing money on all your bonds. You have to be, when you get a real interest rate figured in, you have to be losing money. And the stock market, I mean, do you really want to put more money into FANG stocks with price to earnings ratios over 100? Something ridiculous on a historical basis. It's like, I mean, yeah, if you're a day trader and you're just hopping in and out of positions based on indicators, more power to you. That takes guts. But it's not what, mom and pop with a 401k is going to be doing, right? They're going to look at a quarterly statement and then freak out one way or the other and get used as dumb money, right? Dumb money and slow money. They're not day traders. And let's face it, most of the speculators, most of the day traders, at least in gold and silver, get slaughtered too, because they're playing with leverage. They're playing in the casino. And the banks have all the inside information, and they have infinite money essentially, because they have a hotline to the bank, to the Federal Reserve, and they can do whatever they want. So now I'm saying we can't take very many more 2020s, right? Now's the time. And like I said, I'm not here to sell it to you. I'm not going to make a cent off of this. I just want to live in that new world. I want to stop living in the old world with crooked politicians being able to do whatever they want because of the help of crooked bankers and crooked big businesses and a handful of elites who look down on us like they're superhuman and we're useless eaters. I want to stop living in that world and start living in an honest world of sound money again. And it's like, and it's not going to solve all the problems. Life is still going to be rough. There is going to be new problems. We've lived in the past when there was a sound money standard, and there was still evil in the world, and there were still bad things that happened, and corrupt government, and all this other stuff. But it's the degree of control that they had. It's the leverage that they have now over us. They have to come at us from the front. If they want to come with some kind of new taxation scheme and get people to vote for it, I mean, if you can get people to vote for it, that's fine. Instead of coming through the back door and lying to people and taking their wages through inflation, taking their savings through inflation, that's cold. That's just a lie. And that's what I want to end, right? If you want to be governed and have people consent to being governed in a certain way, that's fine. Manipulating people with this BS in the background like they've been doing for so many years, that needs to end. And that's going to end a lot of corruption. It's going to end a lot of over centralization, and it's going to take away a lot of control from these corrupt elites. And I think that's exactly what the world needs right now is fewer powerful corrupt elite people and a little bit more money, a little bit more decision making power back in the hands of regular people controlling their own lives, making their own decisions for their local families and local communities. And the way we get there is by breaking the silver market. Be a silver buster, buy as much gold and silver as you need to or can, or you will allow yourself to. Because like I said, I can't take very many more 2020s, and I don't see it getting any better. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. We'll get a conversation started, and we'll do more kind of educational videos about if you agree with this path, what is the best path going forward for you to achieve this goal. This has been the Silverbusters channel, signing off.